We spend all our lives giving into corporate demands, sometimes being part of toxic environments. And I think that the wonderful human beings that we are, we tend to lose the essence of humanity. Sometimes we give in to corporate demands and we ignore our loved ones, okay? And then comes retirement. And when we retire, we often struggle to find who we were as basic human beings. What happens after retirement? What does one go through? And how does one struggle to find themselves? What legacies do we leave behind, truly? Let's talk. Hello, hello, hello. This is Tagore, and welcome to my podcast, A Pint of Imbecile Wisdom. Everyday people with everyday stories and hopefully great inspirations for the rest of us. So, today is very unique. I'm talking about a topic which I have not spoken about for the past 3 years that I've been podcasting. And I'm trying to connect it to our theme for this year, which is leadership. This is very important because you know what? We all get into a corporate world, we all do what we have to do, and then we retire, and then we sort of rediscover our real self in some ways. I'm not saying that in a bad way, but there's a transition that happens. We kind of tend to connect with a part of ourselves that we might have forgotten in the whole race of in the corporate world. So I'm talking to my friend here today who has retired, and I want to ask him about what's it like, what are the changes that he's going through emotionally, psychologically, and so forth. So without any further ado, hello Daniel, welcome to my podcast.
Hey Tagore, thanks so much for inviting me, my friend. This is a pleasure to be on.
No, I think I'm just fortunate to be able to talk to you. So before we get into the topic, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, I've been in the corporate world for the last 40 plus years.
Wow.
So I was firstly in the Singapore Air Force as a contract serviceman for 9 years. Following that, I came out to join the commercial sector in the manufacturing area. And then from then on, I went on to the oil field services industry, aerospace industry, and then I was headhunted back to the aerospace industry actually. And then something happened to me there. Probably in the call we can talk about it. I helped to clinch quite a big deal, about $150 million contract, US dollars, back in '96. And then at that time, the company kindly gave me a holiday, but something happened, and so I decided to switch. And so in the next job I took, it was a financial services industry job that I never expected to land on my plate, a portfolio. And then I was there for 24 years. So that's a very brief rundown of the last 40 plus years that I was at active work.
Okay, so were you in the operational side of the business or financial? I mean, what area were you focusing on?
Okay, in the Air Force, I was actually maintaining the air base, literally the entire air base, including the airstrip where the fighter jets land and so on. The hardened shelters. So whenever there's exercise going on, I'll be together with the commanders and so on in the hardened shelters. I can't talk too much about that. Even though it's more than 30 years, I think that's still classified secret. And then subsequently, I was in a manufacturing plant as a superintendent, overseeing manufacturing of and repair of aircraft engines. And then I was in the oil field services, where I got to actually see the oil being pumped out of the ground in Indonesia, in Papua New Guinea, and a few other places. And then I was headhunted to come back into aerospace, where I then became a regional technical rep, where I engaged with clients on the purchase of spare parts, if you would, in aircraft wheels and brakes. And then from then on, I went on to financial information services, managing a regional team for client services, where I met up with governments that use
Wow.
energy, so government corporations, national oil companies, international oil companies, large trading houses, banks, from Pacific Islands all the way to Afghanistan, although we never went to Afghanistan, and then from China to Indonesia, so that was our patch. And subsequently, in the last role before I left that company, it was to nurture young talents that came into the company. So there was the last 2 years. Yeah.
And you know what? The reason I asked you this question again was because I'm trying to establish that you were in quite a powerful job. I mean, you know, as you said, you were looking after the region, you were talking to government officials and everything. So that's like waking up in the morning and having a number of things, all right, on your plate.
Yes.
You know, going to bed at night, telling your wife, you know what, I met so and so in person today, you know, whatever it is. And then came the bit where you went into, like all of us are one day going to do, you went into retirement. So my first question to you is, what was the first week like, if you can remember?
Well, the first week actually occurred not too long ago, just 2 years ago, back in March of 21. However, how it got to that point was because of COVID-19. I was told in November of 2020 that I had to be let go because of some constraints. And the company, instead of letting me go immediately, wanted me to hand over my role, which was a global role at that time, to the person that succeeded me. And so I trained the person for the next 4 months, and then left in March of that year. So I kind of had a timeline to prepare myself and ask myself, what do I want to do? Now, here I've got a confession to make, if you don't mind. I'm somewhat of a workaholic. But by that I mean, because while I was running the regional team, I had oversight of a call center based in Manila as well. So in the Asia team that I was the regional director and head, my work starts from 9 a.m, probably ends at about 5. Let's call it 5. Typically, I go back home, I reach home about 7. But when I was overseeing the call center in Manila, their management, because they work US hours, their management in Manila starts at 9 p.m. and they go back home at 6 a.m. in the morning. Beg your pardon. So, in other words, when I was doing the regional job as well as the overseeing the call center, I was actually doing 2 shifts, so to speak. So my time was 18 hours. And when this opportunity for me to leave the job came, I turned to my home boss, whom is my significant other, the better half of me. Said, this is going to happen, right? I'm going to have more time at home. And I was actually feeling a little bit anxious, truth be told, that suddenly from an 18-hour day, it became twiddling my thumbs. So I had to spend time to understand what is there, what need can I fulfill, because I felt almost like a freight train running at full speed and suddenly coming to a stop, and that wasn't what I wanted. So to answer your question is, I had 4 months to think about it, and then I began to work on a strategy to overcome it.
So, interesting. So let me question that for you. Is now you have a timeline, so you know you're going to retire. Let's look at this side of the fence. You're still in the workplace. You know that in 4 months' time you're going to retire. You know you've got to hand over, build a future generation of leadership. What happens to you emotionally as you get closer to that date? You know, 4 months, 3 months, 2 months, 3 weeks, and so forth. How is that emotional transition happening? Do you go to that thing where, oh dear, you know, this is like my last week at work? Or is it like, oh dear, it's my last week at work? What's that like?
Well, that's an interesting question. And somehow or other, it was a deja vu for me. Deja vu because back in 2014, I told you I was running a regional team. And in my team, the guys in my team are exceptionally talented people. And I was fortunate enough that they wanted to stay with me. Even though they were headhunted, they chose not to leave the team. And some of them have master's degrees, double degrees, and so on. And they chose to remain in the team with me. And there was this gentleman that was very talented and very bright. Is very talented, very bright, beg your pardon, present tense. And he was my successor. And I told him in 2014 that I will coach him for 3 years and hand the team over to him in 2017. And so this was me telling him already. So in the 3 years, I actually took him through a lot of the managerial stuff, how to do appraisals, how to coach people, how to nurture people, gave him a mini team to work on so that he is able then to learn the managerial skills. So in a sense, that kind of helped me in that sense to prepare for my eventual departure from the company. So to answer your question, I kind of felt that I had prepared myself earlier, back in 2014, and I applied the same thing to myself. So I started asking myself, what did I do well? I felt that what I did was nurturing young people well. I connected with teammates of different age groups, ranging from their early 20s, bachelors who came into the team, started dating, got married, and then had children. I also had people in the team that have teenagers that they nurtured into young adults, and folks that came in without children and tried very hard to have children. So I had an eclectic mix of young people. So here, as I was about to leave the company, my question is, how then can I use that experience to help myself transition into a productive environment after I leave? So I'm not sure if that answers the question, but that was kind of the mindset I was in.
So, okay, a month after you retired, what was it like? Was your wife like ready with a broom to hit you on the head and say, leave in the morning, please? I can't have you sticking around for the whole day. Was it something like that? Or was it something like, hey, you know what, darling, let's just spend the whole day together. Let's go and do all the things that we wanted to do. Let's go out and have lunch, but let's go watch a movie, go to a museum. So what was that like?
Okay, so the first month was our honeymoon month. The honeymoon month was already planned, where after I left, then it was Singaporeans, right? Go and eat all our favorite foods, the char kway teows at Hong Lim.
Yes, very much Singaporeans.
Yeah. The Hokkien noodles at Toa Payoh. And because we are near to a bus interchange, we will take buses everywhere in Singapore and just spend the day on buses. And this was planned. It's something that we excitedly spoke about. In the meantime, in the 4 months as I was about to come off, I went around asking some of my peers as well as friends what they did. And I found out some of them actually pivoted to coaching. So I went to find out what was coaching all about. And then I signed up for courses. And the course actually started 1 month after my honeymoon period.
Oh wow! Okay, lucky.
So that transition came very handy in that sense, where I was able to have a vacation and then transition into a study. So I became a student all over again.
Wow. So you know what? That's very interesting what you just said, because even in your professional career, you were building up the next generation. Now you finish your career, your corporate life, and now you're still sort of focused on building the next generation. Why is that important to you?
Well, it's important because someone else took an interest in me when I was very young, when I was 17, 18, and I was kind of fumbling along. If I may say so, I'm a Christian by faith.
Okay.
And at that time I was lost. And I came from a very humble background where I felt that it was not easy for me to get out of the humble background. In fact, when I was 18 at that time, which is what led me to have that story. My granddad had gotten cancer. So my dad left the family a long time ago, another story. But so my granddad was the one that was actually having to uh, fend for the company, fend for the home, sorry, beg pardon, fend for the home, provided the funds, but he had cancer. So he told me that because I was the second grandson, that I had to shoulder the financial burden, and then my brother would be the one going to the university. There was only funds for that, so I had no choice. So for me, instead, I was then given the option of going the easier route. So I went polytechnic instead. So in those days, if you went to the polytechnic and you came out with a diploma, it was easier to find a job, a paying job, much quicker. And also at that time, the Singapore Air Force had a scheme in which those who have diplomas went in as a direct entry, where you're able then to earn an income, relatively good income, right at the get-go. So it attracted me a lot. But to come to that stage, I had a struggle internally to say, why me? Why does everybody else get the chance to go to the university, not me? And so in one of the church camps, a pastor by the name of, maybe I don't mention his name, a pastor who finished his talk with us, and I asked him, if you have some time, would you be willing to sit down with me to have a chat? Because I'm really lost. So rather than going home, at that time we were in Sentosa, in one of the old bungalows there, instead of going home early, he spent time with me for another 2.5 hours to listen to what I had to say, to provide me with counsel, and help me get into the mindset of what I ought to do with my life. So for me, even though I can't remember all the details of what he said at that time, what stuck with me was someone willing to listen, someone willing to share a moment with me.
Wow.
For me to open up and seek guidance. And that to me was something that I can give back.
It's interesting you said that, and I can completely relate to what you said about your grandfather. My mother was born though Indian, she was born in Africa, and then they moved back to India. And she, after her father died, she kind of took on the reins, to look after the family and so forth. But there's something interesting that you mentioned here. That pastor who spent time with you, you were fortunate to have somebody like that in your life, and now I can see you carrying it forward, right? And obviously both of us know the value in it, and that's actually, to me, I can relate to it because you are being what I think leadership is all about. And in my opinion, leadership is all about the humanity aspect of life. It's about having the empathy. It's about the desire to carry it forward. It's about, because once you become a leader, it cannot be about yourself. Because once you become a leader, it's about the people in your team. It's about everybody else and not yourself. And that's a great example of what you're doing here now. But now in the retirement, how does it work in terms of wanting to have fun?
When I was working those crazy 18-hour days, one of the silent promises I made to myself and commitment was that when it came to the retirement time, I would spend a lot of time with my home boss. Because without her giving up her job in order for me to have a career, I would not be as successful as I am right now. So whatever success I have, a lot of credit goes to her. Half is that when we moved into retirement, we started searching for things to do together, which was going out to eat, not lavish, food center, what are all the hawker center places that we can go to, that kind of thing. also spend time watching movies. We even watch Indian movies, Chinese movies, Korean movies, and then lately we are into Korean dramas. We have lately finished our 63rd Korean drama.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's a lot of time.
So a lot of time. So in the sense, and while watching, we are able to share thoughts and feelings about what goes on in the drama. So right now we're at a stage where she's saying, let's watch less and you go and do your thing. So she's kind of like allowing me to go and do my thing now.
You know what? It's interesting what you're saying, and I really admire what you're saying on that. So just imagine right now you're sitting down, your phone rings, and someone says, "Hey, I have a job opportunity for you. It might be a full time, or it might be a contract. Uh, are you in that space where you're saying, "Oh, I'd love to jump on it. It's a great challenge," or are you in that space where you say, "Nah, I'm done. I've accepted the fact that I'm retired. I'm coaching and mentoring, and I'm happy in my space." So, what's the answer to that?
Well, actually, to be honest with you, I would take the job.
You would. Oh, okay.
I would.
Can I
And
ask you how come? So, why? I mean, what is the trigger for that?
uh, two things. One is that to stay relevant in industry, because the industry is changing so fast. So it depends on the industry that's calling up and saying that, oh, I've got this job. So whichever job it is, and the government has made it very clear, right, that in terms of the demographics, by the year 2030, 1/4 of all Singaporeans will be at least 65 years old. So the new old, the new seniors, the junior seniors, if you can put it that way, are coming up. So there's a big change and big shift in demography. And even in the young people that I coach, I can sense that too because they are feeling the weight of the burden on them to take care of their elderly parents. So to be able to connect back into society in that sense is helpful for me. Although at the moment I'm more interested in short-term contract work rather than long-term work, if you know what I mean. So that I'm able then to space out my time appropriately. Like for example, next year, my home boss intends to go on 2 family vacations. So it's not viable for me to take long-term work. Yeah.
Wow. Now, I was quite surprised because I had thought in my mind, I'd assumed rather that your answer would be like, "Nah, I'm done with the corporate world. I'm just going to stay happy the way I am, and I'm going to coach young people, and that's it." But no right or wrong. I think what you're saying is very valid because I can understand why you would take another job just to keep your mental self going on. Okay. So here's my other question to you: is there life after retirement?
Absolutely.
How?
Absolutely. All of us bring along a lot of experiences in our life journey. We are here not by chance. We are here because of whatever fortuitous events that took place in our lives. And for us to be able to share that with someone else, I think is an immense opportunity. Why I say that is because I have colleagues whom I have known for 20 over years. All of a sudden, I hear that they have gotten an illness, and then shortly after they passed on. I've heard of acquaintances recently, in fact just last month, that person, quite a senior person, after going out for cycling, came back home. Shortly before reaching home, fell over, heart attack, passed away. For me, there's not much time left to give back. So it is a matter of whether a person chooses to give back or not, or does a person choose to be idle at home? So is there life after retirement? Absolutely. The question is, how willing are we to engage? Not whether is there a life.
So now,
No.
here's my thing now. Now you're looking back at your life, and
Yes.
I don't mean to sound negative about it, but you're looking back at your life and you've been in a leadership position, okay, whether it was regionally or globally, right? What is one thing that you want to share? Well, two things. One is, what is one thing that you're very proud of, okay? And number two, what is the one thing which you wish you could have done better? Not looking back, just that.
I think that the thing I'm most proud of is a concept that I shared with my team, where the regional team I had for 20 plus years. And it is that when in our interactions with others, we should focus on the issue and not the person. Focus on the intent, not the content. Because if we focus on the person, it becomes very acrimonious. Whereas if we focus on the issue, then it is talking about addressing the issue, the rights and wrongs, the right way and the wrong way of addressing the issue, fixing the issue, not fixing the person. So in terms of a conversation and language, this is how we conduct ourselves. And so that I was pleasantly surprised to find that even after I've left the team, they carry on that tradition, even in their engagements with clients or internally within the team. So the team gel together as one, despite them being geographically dispersed. So that's what I'm most proud of. What I'm not so proud of is my earlier years. I was known as a slave driver. Slave driver in the sense that because I'm a workaholic, I expected everyone else to work like me.
Yeah.
And I pushed the team really, really hard. So at some point, in my later years, I look back and I say, maybe I could have gone a little bit easier on these guys.
So, okay, here's my other question now for you. Is, being in the corporate world, many a times you've had to do things which are not traditionally part of your soul, but we've all had to do it, whether it's firing somebody or playing a bit of a dirty game to get something done in the best interest of the organization. What happens to people who do that quite frequently after they retire? There's no corporate for whom they are now slaves to, and all they're left with now is their selves. So what is the challenges you think that they go through, having to rediscover their real traits as human beings?
Well, as leaders, sometimes making the tough decisions are always there, which is why in terms of the policies and the structures, the governance model, it must not encourage someone to bend the rules too much. Otherwise, there will be problems. If you're referring to other things, for example, corporate politics, those will be in place all the time. So in terms of corporate politics, as one colleague told me, and he was quite genuine about it, this is Daniel, I think you are the most diplomatic person I've ever met. And I think that diplomacy is something that can be nurtured and cultivated. There are people in the organization that once they have intentions of sticking their knives into other people's backs.
Yeah.
And sometimes that is quite evident by itself. So for those people, what I do is I do build a certain fence by being a knowledge expert in the area that is my domain. For example, where if someone needs something, I am the natural go-to person. And because of like-minded people in the organization that I'm able to link up with and share certain ideals, we are able to reinforce each other to prevent that from happening. So there are strategies around such things happening. Now, if the question is, Daniel, did you ever have to have a time where you need to make certain decisions that are tough? Yes, there were. And the questions I ask myself is, under those circumstances, when I was doing those things, was it morally and ethically wrong? Or was it something that was a business need and was still morally and ethically correct? So I had to ask those questions.
And now, just knowing you the little time that I've known you, you're a fair man. Okay, you have a good heart. You want to pass on and build future generation. Have you ever worked under a toxic boss or within a toxic organization? And what advice would you give to people who are going through that?
I would say this, that the bully doesn't exist forever. The bully uses words, and the bully uses threats, if you would, but I do not have to succumb to them. It may be that I'm in this job and I need the money for now, which at that point in time, I needed the money. In fact, my boss was actually quite toxic. I didn't want to use that phrase, but he was. My point was, in that particular job I was in, what can I learn from that job? That's one. Number two is, what leadership skills could I learn that I can carry forward, that are transferable skill sets that I can take away from this job eventually. So even though, yes, the boss is toxic and so on, end of the day, my question to myself is, did I do a good job? Did I do my job well according to my standards, according to what needs to be done? Whatever the boss says, those are the criteria. If I have done that and whatever the boss says, it's fine. He or she can say whatever he or she likes to say. It is the criteria of the job that I'm performing. And in any job, there's always something I can learn. Then my colleagues all around me can see. So I will not allow myself to succumb to it. I do not. Which is why I built a ring fence around myself mentally, so that if my boss were to say something negative, however loud the voice, I filter that loud voice out and I pick out the elements that are true. If he says something about me and that is true, it means it's something for me to learn. If what he says is not true, it filters out.
But okay, so now we've talked about ourselves, we've talked about bosses or leaders, whatever you want to call them. What should corporates keep in mind when they either recruit new people as leaderships or team leaders, or promote internal people to team leaders? Because I strongly believe that I think leadership is now losing its flavor in today's day and age, thanks to the woke movement, the cancel thing. People are getting promoted for the wrong reasons. You know what I mean? And it's going to have quite a bad impact on the world a few years from now. Yeah. So what do you think corporates need to keep in mind when either recruiting a new leader or promoting somebody to a leadership role?
I think the most important factor is that we still are dealing with human beings. The ability for a person to have empathy, like you mentioned very much earlier.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So the lack of empathy is something in which will make the workforce feel unappreciated. And at some point in time, when you need them to put their backs to the work, they will slack off. They will back off and say, sorry, I don't have time for you. But if the empathetic leader was to show that early enough in the game, so to speak, then when the time comes for people to put in their fair share, they will. Selecting a leader is not just about their business acumen or their technical abilities. It's also about the ability to connect with people.
Yeah, nice. I like that. I really like how you put that in there. I really, really like it. Okay, and I mean, for me, I have about 5 or 6 people who have influenced my life, my leaders, and you'll be very surprised as to who they are. Starts with Mahatma Gandhi, Nelson Mandela, Bob Marley, believe it or not, Charlie Chaplin, Mother Teresa, And if I were to put in another person in there, would be Bob Geldof, who just an Irish rocker who saw the world in a way that not many people had spoken about. The
Right.
famine in Africa, and you know what? If you notice, I'm in the tech industry. I don't have Bill Gates or Steve Jobs in there because you know what? They're going to come and go. But these people that I mentioned in my life, they've left their footprint. And oh, sorry, and the other one is John Lennon. I mean, as you can see, imagine. I mean, their whole life is about imagining a world, living together and all of that. And that's, to me, that is what leadership is about: bringing people together, getting the best out of people, and let them flourish. You
Yes.
give them respect, and they will give you results. Yeah. So my last question to you: what's on your bucket list now?
My bucket list is actually to be able to play with my grandchildren and see them grow up to be teenagers.
Oh wow,
Yeah,
wow! You
that
really
that's
got,
my
you've nearly got me tearing up at the moment when you said that, because I just thought you'd be talking about, like, a bucket list, how many people with it, but wait, and I know that is your daughter still in the UK or is she back now in
she's
Singapore?
doing her PhD in the UK and
Oh
she intends to settle down in the UK.
wow, great! But that's so amazing that your bucket list is about your grandchildren. I think people who put their families and their loved ones first are just amazing human beings. They and at the same time being respectful about other human beings who are not their relatives. You know what I mean? But that's great. Look, it's been great talking to you about this whole concept of retirement and also this concept of leadership. But you know what? Just based on what you're saying, I think I've got about another 10 years before I get retired, or maybe 12 years, I don't know. And I'm now looking forward to it. After I'm looking forward to it. Yes, and I have a home minister as well, and she's my greatest strength, and I would never admit that in public, by the way. So she's my greatest strength. I just want to spend my life with her. I have a daughter, as you know, and I have been unfair to them sometimes with my work demands and traveling, getting on a plane every week, but not anymore. So I'm looking forward to just having that. You've inspired me. You actually have inspired me to look forward to a retirement thing. I've had a couple of friends who've retired in this past year and a half, and I still keep in touch with them because I want to make sure that they're emotionally and mentally in a good place. You know, so I still call them up, I bug them, I bully them, just because for them to know that I still love them. So it's important. But you've inspired me, Daniel. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much for talking to me, and
Thanks,
I
Tagore.
I hope we're going to keep in touch. Any last message to any of our young or old readers who have young people who are getting into the workplace or are in the workplace, and old people who are now going to go into the retirement phase? Any last message to them?
Well, to the young, I will say this, that you will be the future leaders, and there's always someone that looks up to you as you go up in your corporate ladder, as you go up in life. And for those that are more senior, I would say that don't waste your good years, share them with someone younger so that they can learn from your rich experience. So those are my few words.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, thank you once again so much.